Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to My Overly Competitive Life. Once again, I'm your host, Charles Chapman. For coming today, it's the week of the NFL draft. Here we go, representing the 84 of the Minnesota Vikings. Randy Moss, the legendary wide receiver, who lost a lot of guys in this day. Why? This guy just recently got voted into the NFL Hall of Fame. Great football quarterback, or wide receiver, great wide receiver, a lot of talent there. And, of course, this draft also is a special one for him, not just because this is the year he got elected into the Hall of Fame, but also in this 2020 NFL draft features his son, Thad Moss, a tight end from LSU. Had a good breakout year as a junior. Last year as a redshirt junior, 47 receptions for 570 yards and 4 touchdowns. 3 of those which came in, one in the college football playoff semifinal against Oklahoma, and 2 others in a national championship game against Clemson. So, big breakout year for Thad Moss. He declared for the NFL draft after his junior year, feeling like he's ready for the NFL draft, and we'll see what happens. He's projected to be a 3rd or 4th round pick, despite a lot of criticism to the fact that he doesn't have his father's pedigree, he doesn't have his father's athletic ability to get up there and make that big pass. They're not talking about his pass catching ability or his speed or anything like that, which he doesn't have a whole lot of speed. I'm not sure what he ran, and he didn't work out at the combine. Unfortunately, he had a foot injury that had to heal. Was hoping to work out on his pro day April 3rd. That did not happen, of course, because of COVID-19, and that's a very unfortunate situation. But Thad Moss, son of Randy Moss, has a humble pedigree, unlike his father. Very much. His fine with being a blocking tight end. He knows his job in the NFL. His bread and butter might be blocking versus catching the football. And that was the same attitude he had last year against at LSU when all those offensive weapons they had, that record-breaking offense. Thad was very much content with being the guy behind the scenes. But, of course, they break out play in the playoff semifinals, the college football playoff semifinals against Oklahoma, and a breakout game in a national championship against Clemson. Sure to put him on the map, shows that he does have some kind of catching ability. So a guy that I think the New England Patriots are looking at it to be their Rob Gronkowski type guy, an H-back, a tight end, H-back, a blocking fullback, that kind of stuff that Bill Belichick loves to do. So representing the Big 84, I'm excited about this draft, and I wanted to touch up on some things in the quarantine here, not a whole lot of time, shelter in place, not able to get out of the house. So been trying to do as much as I can. Don't talk about sports. There's not a lot going on, but the NFL draft, of course, this week, so that's something we're going to talk about today. I want to talk about this draft. And one of the biggest themes for this draft for me is the impact that COVID-19 has on this draft. This will be the first time ever that the draft has not had a physical location. It was supposed to be in Las Vegas, home to the Las Vegas Raiders. It was supposed to be in Las Vegas this year, and unfortunately, because of COVID-19 and the fact that the NFL does business in a lot of states that have shelter-in-place laws and shelter-in-place rules right now and executive orders and whatnot, that there's not a lot of people that are allowed to get together in groups bigger than 10. The NFL has decided to go ahead and do a virtual draft using Zoom, as I understand it. They will do as the NFL owners, GMs, and the head coaches, and maybe even a head scout, getting together through phone interviews, phone conferences, Zoom meetings and stuff like that to make their picks, to get those picks to Roger Goodell, who will announce those. This should be, I think, ESPN and the NFL Network will share the same broadcast feed for that draft, which is supposed to start Thursday night with round 1 at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central, if I remember correctly on that one. And this draft is unique for a lot of reasons, not only because of the virtualness of it all, but because this is the first draft where it's pretty much an even playing field. There are teams that don't know how to do their homework, and there are teams that know how to do their homework, and there's the rest of the reason they're in the playoffs every year. But the teams that know how to do their homework, they do the interviews, they do the personal workouts, they have their specialized workouts and stuff like that. They're not able to do that this year. There's not been any pro days. Not since the NFL Combine have NFL teams been able to get their hands on players and actually work them out and put them through physical checkups to find out if they're physically healthy and worth being drafted, where these teams want to draft them. And So no meeting in places. A lot of projected guys, or a lot of guys that are trying to get drafted, who are projected as day 2, day 3 guys are doing their due diligence, and the guys that are trying to move up in the first round or into the first round are doing their due diligence. They're getting together with their trainers, their personal trainers, and their head coaches and whatnot, and doing whatever they can. I don't think they can give their head coaches, of course, NCAA kind of bars that right now, but they're getting together with one-on-one with trainers, and they're doing the kind of workouts that they would have done at their pro day, and they're filming these workouts. They're sending these video tapes to prospective NFL teams, if not every NFL team, hoping that somebody will look at it and go, we'd like to take a chance on that guy and draft him. That's pretty much what this draft is. It's just a gamble up and down the board, from the first pick in the draft all the way to the final pick in the draft. And it's going to be very much looking at Wonderlic tests and combine results, and looking a lot more at tape on these guys from 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. If they were a 4-year starter, 2016 hopefully. If not, if you have a lot of one-hit wonders, those are the guys that are really going to drop a little bit in this draft, because there's not a lot of tape on them. Just the 2019 season, so that's going to be very hard for guys like that. With this draft, I think is probably the perfect storm for one guy in particular, Joe Burrow, that I projected #1 pick. He's been the projected #1 pick since the beginning, since the first mock drafts came out in January. And when we find out who was going to come out for the draft, who was staying for school next year, and whatnot. And so since the first mock drafts came out, Joe Burrow's been a projected #1 pick, and rightfully so. He's had a great year, Heisman Trophy winning campaign, won the national championship, undefeated season at LSU, and just a tremendous turnaround for the Tigers, and a record-breaking season. Arguably, in my opinion, and I think a lot of other people's opinion, you'd probably be very hard to find anybody that would argue otherwise, the greatest single season for an offense in college football history. And that trumps the 2016 Sooners, the 2017 Sooners. A lot of OU football teams that had great offenses. This LSU team is by far and above those OU teams in terms of great offensive outputs. A lot of records broken. The wide receivers, the running backs, tight ends, and just quarterback play. Just a lot of great play for that team last year, and on their way to the national championship. And so Joe Burrow, rightfully so, been projected as the #1 pick. But I kind of want to take a step back and look at what would have happened this year's draft had we had a year similarly to previous years, where NFL teams and coaches can get together with their players and the guys that they want to draft, the guys that they're looking at drafting in the first round and whatnot, and say, put these guys through workouts, put them through interviews, pick them up from the airport, take them for a drive, take them out to eat, take them to the mall, things like that, seeing what their persona is like, who they are as people, how they interact on a daily basis with everybody from the janitor to the CEO and different things like that, how they treat people, how they interact with people, how they talk, how they handle different pressures and stuff like that, things that you can only find out getting together with somebody one-on-one, face-to-face. If we had a year like this without COVID-19, what would this draft look like right now? Would we have somebody else at #1? And that's not a stretch, because it's happened plenty of times before. It's happened in the last 2 years. In fact, in 2018, it was the projected first-round pick for Mel Kiper. In January, quarterback Josh Allen from Wyoming. And, of course, we know Josh fell in the draft. He wasn't the #1 pick. The actual #1 pick that year was Baker Mayfield, who, when mock drafts were first coming out, he wasn't even projected to be a #1 guy, a first-round guy. He was actually projected out in the second round, and he moved his way up into the first round and ultimately became the #1 overall pick to the Cleveland Browns, and that was a great place for him. And also in 2019, projected #1 pick in January, Nick Bosa, defensive end from Ohio State. Nick, of course, went #2 in the draft, and Kyler Murray, who was originally projected to go 13th overall to the Miami Dolphins, was taken #1 by the Arizona Cardinals and their new head coach. And so it's not a stretch. I mean, it's happened before where a guy has gone up and down in the draft and stuff like that. Josh Allen went, I think, 7th overall in 2018 to the Buffalo Bills. And Nick Bosa, of course, going, #2 to the San Francisco 49ers. And so the guys that get projected #1 overall, they sometimes they go from 1 to 2, or they go from 1 to 7. And Dwayne Haskins was a guy that was projected to go number 1 overall at one point last year in the draft. And he went all the way to 15 to the New York Giants. And so it's not a stretch for us to say a guy like Joe Burrow, who had one really great season. And I mean, I like the guy. But, and I was saying some good things about him in 2018 when the LSU-Alabama game was coming up and everything. And I looked at him and I looked at his tape. I looked at his stats. And I said, you know what? I think the LSU could upset Ohio State or Alabama that year because the way they were trending in a positive direction, they were getting better as a team in 2018. And, of course, we all know what happened there. You know, Alabama shut them out 29-0. And it was the ugliest showing offensively for LSU in 2018. Of course, fast forward to 2019, Joe Burrow gets all the right pieces around him and shows off those skills that he has. So he has the skill set to be the number 1 guy. He has the skill set to be a first-round pick. I just wonder if he would have really been a first-round pick had all this COVID-19 stuff not happened, had people been able to do the homework they wanted to do, interview the guys they wanted to interview, and actually get together with the players and just work them out, put them through physical fitness tests and stuff like that, get their doctors to look at them, stuff like that. I mean, there's no telling who would actually be the number 1 pick on Thursday night if that had all happened. I mean, there's a lot of guys. The current projected number 2 pick, Chase Young, defensive end from Ohio State. The biggest knock on Chase, he's the best defensive player in this draft right now. But the biggest knock on Chase, despite the fact that he had a great year last year, was the fact that he was MIA in the last 3 games for Ohio State. And that cost the Ohio State Buckeyes a lot, a shot at the college football playoff, a shot at the national championship. And so he goes MIA the last 3 games of the season. And a lot of people go, well, that's not enough to take him number 1 overall, take that chance on him. Because he could have ended up being a guy that, you know, looked really good in college, looked really good on film, looks really good on the field, and ends up being a guy that doesn't translate to the NFL. I think that's a concern that a lot of people have, and that's why he's gone. He's not a number 1 overall projected, but a number 2 overall pick. And then, don't get me wrong, he'll be a valuable guy at 2 just as well as 1. Because it's not, in the NFL draft, it's not necessarily, if you get picked number 1 overall, it doesn't necessarily mean you're the best guy in the draft. It just means you were the best fit at number 1, or you were the best fit at number 2 for what that team was needing. Very rarely do teams draft based on the best guy available in the NFL draft. It's not like other drafts and stuff like that, where you take the best guy and you put him in your system and you try to breed him. The NFL doesn't have a farm system like Major League Baseball. The NFL doesn't have a G League like the NBA does, or development leagues. They don't have that. They have the NFL, and then there's the practice squad. And if you draft this guy, you better hope that you have a spot for him, especially in the first round. So just because Chase goes 2 doesn't mean he's a bad guy. Just because Joe Burrow goes number 1 doesn't mean he's the best player in this draft. It just means he's the best fit for the Cincinnati Bengals at number 1. So that's basically how you look at it. And there's a lot of other guys that could move up and down in the draft. I mean, you look at Justin Herbert from Oregon. This is a guy that was projected to go late in the first round to like the Las Vegas Raiders at 19, or to the Patriots somewhere in the 20s or something like that. I'm not sure exactly where they're picking it just yet, but he's getting a lot of momentum. He's moved up, and they're talking about him at 6. They're talking about him at 5. Now, so who knows? If this had been a regular draft, Justin Herbert could have very easily moved up to the number 1 pick. He lost a lot of momentum. I mean, last year he was a Heisman finalist, projected early Heisman Trophy winner before the season began last year, and he didn't exactly have a consistent season. So, I mean, he lost a lot of momentum in terms of could he have been the number 1 pick in this draft, and Joe Burrow came in and just kind of took that spot from him with the record-breaking season that he had. So, who knows? Justin Herbert could have been that guy from Oregon to go up there. Another guy, Jordan Love, great season in 2018 at Utah, and as a quarterback, terrific season in 2018. Loses a lot if the guys around him heading into the 2019 season. A lot of new players in their starting lineup on offense for Utah, and he doesn't exactly have the season he had hoped to have in 2019 and he had in 2018. He's showing a lot of concerns with his accuracy and with his management of the game and stuff like that. So there's no telling. I mean, Jordan Love, he could have very easily silenced those critics in terms of the concerns he had if he had private workouts with NFL teams, you know, and put on physical stuff like that. Tua from Alabama. I don't really like to mention Tua a whole lot because I think Tua's getting a lot of too much hype being from Alabama because of the guys he has around him at Alabama. Nothing but five-star players in that lineup. Anybody can have a great season at Alabama with that kind of stuff. So I don't know if Tua's necessarily a first-round guy for me. I'd take him late in the first round, really. I mean, especially with the injury concerns there. His camp has come out and said he's healthy and he's passed all these physicals. His rehab is going great, and that's great. But in this draft where you can't physically get a hold of somebody and put your hands on them, it's not a good draft to kind of take a gamble on a quarterback because you're not necessarily, outside of maybe Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow, I don't really think you're going to find a franchise quarterback in this draft. This was a great year to find a guy to lead your team in 2020 in terms of quarterbacks with the free agency we had between Tom Brady, Cam Newton's in free agent right now. Let's see, a couple other guys out there. I mean, this is a great draft, a great free agency for quarterbacks. And it was a really deep free agent class for quarterbacks. And then you got, when you go into the draft and everything, you've got some pretty good quarterbacks in this draft. I think there's some guys that are underrated, but also not exactly as good as people would think they are. Jake Fromm from Georgia, Jalen Hurts from Oklahoma, Tua from Alabama. I don't think this is necessarily a great draft for these guys. So I don't think this is a draft that you're going to find your franchise quarterback, but I could be wrong. I mean, you could very well get lucky and get your franchise quarterback in this draft. You're not necessarily going to give him round one. I mean, Tom Brady was a 20-year franchise quarterback for the New England Patriots, and they got him in round 6, I believe, was it? Or 7, 6, round 6 in 1998. So, I mean, not exactly a concern if you don't get your guy in round 1 this year, especially. I wouldn't even gamble on a quarterback in round 1. I wouldn't even trade up. The Miami Dolphins are talking about trading up right now. I wouldn't even be trying to trade up for a quarterback. If you're trying to trade up in this draft, I'd be trading up for a wide receiver. I'd be trading up for a linebacker or something like that, because there's a few of those, a defensive end or something like that, because there's a few of those in this draft that are going to be transcendent talents. They're going to be franchise guys for your team that you can put on your defense and fill a spot. I wouldn't even worry about quarterbacks as far as taking a gamble on quarterbacks, because there's not a lot of them in this draft that I would really take a gamble on. But speaking of Jake Fromm, maybe Jake Fromm is a projected 4th round, projected to go with day 2, maybe day 3 kind of guy. Maybe he could have moved up in the draft and been a guy that wowed our socks off and become a number 1 overall pick. I don't know, but I got cut off there. But yeah, maybe Jake Fromm could be a guy from Georgia that could move into the 1st round and become a 1st round pick. I don't know. This is just a whole lot of things that, a what-if situation, pretty much, if you will, for a guy, for the NFL draft, as far as just going number 1. And at the end of the day, all these guys are going to get picked, I mean, Jake Fromm, Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, Chase Young, Joe Burrow, they're all going to get taken in the draft. It's just a matter of when. And, of course, the number 1 pick is the one we talk about the most, because it's the most prestigious spot. I mean, you'll be able to go the rest of your career, the rest of your life saying, I was once the number 1 overall draft pick. And that's a big thing for some guys, and some guys it's no big deal. But schools kind of measure their football programs by how many number 1 overall picks they have. And, of course, this time of year, everybody argues on all the fan bases on the social media sites, arguing about who's got the most number 1 overall picks in their school's history. So, I mean, it's a big deal, who's going to go number 1 overall. And it's just a wonder, how's it going to go out, who's going to be there. And, of course, the one big thing today, of course, I mentioned earlier, the draft is going to be all virtual. And that's a big concern, because there's a lot of concerns with doing that, all virtual with Zooms, particularly hacking. Zoom has had a lot of their conference calls be hacked in recent days and recent weeks. And people who are, hacking into the feed and posting derogatory images or, pornographic images and things like that, and things that just are very distasteful, and that's a concern that the NFL has, is what's going to happen on draft night on Thursday and then Friday and Saturday, what's going to happen with these meetings and stuff like that. And, of course, also spying. A lot of GMs are concerned that what if these other teams are able to get into their conference calls and hear who they're playing in the draft and make a move and get that guy before they do, or something like that. So there's some concerns there. And the NFL ran a virtual mock draft this morning to see how the process would go on Thursday, and it was not a very pretty sight. There was a lot of glitches. There were communication errors. Just left a lot of NFL GMs very irate, very frustrated with how this process has gone. And they're very concerned. And with how this is going to go on Thursday. And the NFL has, 2 or 3 days right here to figure this out before the draft happens on Thursday to decide if they want to go forward with this or do they want to postpone the draft until they can be really absolutely sure that they can do this the right way and make sure that the integrity of the NFL, the integrity of the draft, and the integrity of the process doesn't get ruined. Otherwise, this could be very well the next ESPN 30 for 30 we talk about is the COVID-19 draft in 2020. And so, just some thoughts that I have there. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Leave them below, your comments below. Share with your friends. Hit the like button, subscribe. And just let me know what you think about this NFL draft and your thoughts on who could be number one in any other year, and who if Joe Burrow is worthy of being a number one pick. Do you think Joe Burrow could be a NFL franchise quarterback for the next 10, 15, 20 years? Let me know. Yeah, he's got a good spot in Cincinnati if he ends up in Cincinnati. But just let me know in the comments below. Peace out, guys. Have a great day. Stay safe and stay home. Wash your hands and take lots of showers. Love your loved ones. And have a good day.